照れ触れたその瞬間傷で
交わる想い始まりの上
繰り返し身を合わせた先で駆け飛ぶ世界は In my way 君の夢るそのつかんだ首を立てばこの 魅惑 One, two, three 君を単純に奪い去ってしまう衝動理性との標語 Can you feel もっと感情に強く触って走ってランランラン君と One, two, three ずっとハイゾーンに Speed up on my heart 行動奇跡との標語 Close to me もっと深くに落ちて Down, 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 down
Yep. What's up, everybody? It's supposed to be Fome, but a lot of people call me Fome, but it's supposed to be Fome. That's okay. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. Mochi's going to start us off. We're going to kind of do this in two parts. So Mochi, you can probably introduce what you're going to do, and then I'll take a step back, and then you'll take over. God damn, Howl, it's your language. That's a good overview. Man, people can call me whatever they like. Honestly, it's fine. Oh, hey, Mochi. Zal says he can only hear from the right. Can you set it to mono?
Oh, wait. I forgot to unmute myself. I'm a dum-dum.
Oh, sorry. Mochi forgot to unmute herself, so I'm the only one that is audible. Whoops.
Well, now I am audible, and I'm sorry about
So
that.
now it sounded like I was having a conversation with myself for like several minutes.
Mistakes were made. It is hot here. I am withering away. It is okay. I am now here.
All right, can
Okay.
you give
I
your
will
introduction?
repeat my introduction really quick about mixing. Anyways, so the main thing for us is that we're going to be covering mostly timing and tuning today because I personally feel it is a really important backbone to mixing as a whole. It's something that people don't really think about because people sort of write it off as like just random like tasks that people just, usually have a timer and tuner on the side. But personally for me, I feel that like timing and tuning is 70% of your mix quality that is perceived by your audience, because even though you have all these fancy gadgets that might go on later on, everyone's going to know if you're not singing the same notes or not ending your lines at the same time. So that's my personal thing.
Yeah. So editing is more important than mixing for what people think is a good chorus.
Yes, because unfortunately during regular professional recording process, they can make you redo lines if they think you're off time, but we don't have that luxury here, and that's totally fine. So there are lots of different ways to go around it. The major thing here is, so the first thing I'm going to really touch on is there's like a constant debate on what is the best audio editor. I mean, I can see Fome in the corner going like, Reaper, but
Reaper's the best.
like I said, But it is the same debate as, is Apple or Android the best? Fome goes, Android. But anyways, so there's a lot of different tools out there. Personally, both Fome and I both use Reaper. It is the same. It is like WinRAR, but for audio editors. You can permanently be on the trial version, and you will never have to pay. So it's a really good way.
Really cheap, though. It's only like, I think it was like $50 or $60.
It's $60 now, and it gives you like access to several versions for free.
So it's extremely generous for what you get.
It definitely is. Zal asked if I could work in a default theme. I mean, I could, but you see.
I have, so when I go on, my Reaper will be in the default theme, so you can see it that way. Mochi has her workflow, so it'd be hard for her to change that right now.
Oh gosh, I'm blinded.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, so I'd rather not, just because I've set things up. The nice thing about Reaper is that you can really customize your look and feel. You can also customize how you lay things out. Everyone has a different way. There are disadvantages to Reaper where it has a very high learning curve if you've never used an audio editor before, or DAW. We call it Digital Audio Workstation to be more specific. And it really depends on, and I know that a lot of people in this community also use Audition. It's not designed for audio mixing in this way. It was really meant for video audio editing. And some other popular tools would be Cubase and Pro Tools, which are going to be industry standards. They're very, very expensive. We're talking about several $100s at the minimum. And of course, they're finicky in their own ways. So it's really choose a tool that works for you. For tuning, a majority of this community will be using Melodyne. There are some people that also use Auto-Tune 7. And some people also use Wavetune. They all function very similarly, so we're just going to show you basic setups and everything. So for me personally, I do timing in Reaper, and I also do tuning in Melodyne. I do Melodyne standalone, unlike a lot of people who do prefer to use the VST versions. That's just a personal preference for me, because it just has to do with the fact that I separate the workflow out in a way that it's for my own sanity.
So I'm going to cover Melodyne as a VST. Mochi's going to cover it as an external editor.
Yeah, and also, yes, we will be leaving the stream up. We'll have the video still up once it's over, so don't worry about that. So one of the first things that needs to be touched into is making sure that your Reaper settings are correct for timing, because Reaper has a lot of different stretching algorithms that'll be coming in, and some sound worse than others. So I'm going to do Alt Enter, or you can also go to File, and then you go into your project settings and make sure that your default pitch shift mode is Elastic Soloist. If it's just the basic one, you're gonna get that a lot of artifacting going on. It's gonna sound horrible. I don't recommend it. Just put that in there. And also make sure that your time base is for time and your tempo signature is for beats. It's gonna come up later as you're gonna be setting up the metronome in your project. So this is actually a project that you guys might have heard before. This is actually the duet that Vuvu and I did together. He's okayed it with me, and these are our raw lines. Of course, Vuvu has asked me on why I was using his vocals, on if they were bad or not. They're not. But the main thing is that it's Tengoku to Jigoku. It's very fast. It's a little bit tricky. And pretty much I do already have the metronome set. So what you can normally do with Reaper is you can just tap the metronome button right up here in order to find your tempo. I personally don't like doing that because it never works for me, because I suck at tapping on it. I don't know why. And I'm a dummy who uses just this website that lets me tap.
Oh, the tapping only gives you approximate BPM. It doesn't work that well.
It doesn't really work well.
I didn't even know there's a website. I just guess and check.
Oh, I use let me see if it automatically, and whoops, did I open something I wasn't supposed to? Oh, I opened complete. Okay. But let me see. I use this. All
we
you
can't see
do.
your window. Oh, there it is. Okay.
So what I do is literally I play the song and I just tap it to the beat, and then I just fiddle around with it till it works. So pretty much, I have let's just see, I have the on vocal sold right now of the full release. So let's see. I literally just tap it. Technically, I'm gonna turn off the metronome for this, but. So pretty much what I'm doing is I get the
Mochi,
approximate.
Is the DAW audio supposed to be playing right now?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear it.
Oh, was it?
It's not. We can't hear it.
There. I know what
Just
happened.
check your meter settings.
I always forget. This is what happens when I just rush into things and I don't think it through. Let's see.
Yeah, voice meter.
Yeah, there it is. Well, now you can hear from Reaper. Anyways, you didn't miss out on myself.
We still can't hear from Reaper actually.
Really?
横に溺れた生き物に
now we
下された罰
Okay, now it's working. Cool.
Jeffers says there is something called Mixbiter BPM Analyzer that does it for you, does the work for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffers. I'm gonna.
Thanks,
I'm gonna steal
Jeffers.
that.
I should probably write that down because I'm tired of being that sieve that does this.
I'm jotting it down right now. Mix Master BPM Analyzer. Sweet.
Okay. Anyways,
This is a community effort, guys.
we're trying. So pretty much what I'm going to end up doing is that you can usually see your BPMs by the spikes. That's going to be going down as it goes down. And then in this case, it's fully aligned. I already have all the BPM in. So for here, it's 276. That's just because I personally like it beating faster. And also to make sure that when you have grid lines enabled, you can also right click on it. This button right here. You're gonna have this toolbar on all Reaper versions. I do understand that I do have a skin version, so the buttons look different. But if you see a bunch of little squares, that's gonna be the grid right over here. And pretty much you're gonna also make sure that by default, normally the line spacing will be for 1/4, so it's gonna be for quarter notes, and you want it to be for at least 1/8 notes or more. And it's gonna really depend on the song itself. Everyone's a little different. And usually it should be pretty aligned. Usually I do a check by just making sure the grid lines are aligning, and then also I just turn on the metronome. So I have the metronome running. Okay, it's in time. Cool. So that's set up. Let's see. So when it goes to importing lines into Reaper, which I always forget about mentioning, what you can usually do is when you do a file import into it, so let's say, so the shortcut here to add a new track would be Control T. You could press insert media file or just press insert button. And then technically, if you you could select multiple tracks and you could import it straight in, and it'll ask you if you want it on separate tracks, and it'll just automatically disperse it for you. In this case, if I did it right now, it would also go over all these current tracks. So something to note when you're adding in tracks. So our best friend while timing will be the grid lines here, and will also be your stretch tool. So your stretch marker is very, very important. It essentially creates an anchor point where if you add another point down the line and you start moving that around, then the anchor point will not be moving. So you're essentially just doing, you stretch and you squeeze just to get everything to be well timed together. For me, I'm at a point where I don't always need to even listen to the instrumental to time, because you could do it quite visually, because as you can see, like with Vuvu's line, you can see that like with every syllable, you're going to see a spike that comes up. And there's always naturally a little bit of like some sibilance at the beginning. So like you can see right over here, he's like taking a big breath and a big breath's coming out. So it's going to be, because I think the first line's like ko wa tengoku, I think. But essentially, I like to put my anchors after the beginning of the syllable, like when the main part of the syllable comes in, because otherwise it's that weird like sound or the sounds that come in before the main part comes in. So like it gives you this, if those parts are timed to like the grid lines, it ends up making the person sound like they're running behind the music a bit. And usually when you first start up, and you're not really used to the coding which syllables which, when I was first starting, I usually would actually just pull down the on vocal and literally stack it on top. And I would literally start matching waveforms, because you could see like, that's the first syllable, that's the next syllable, that's the next syllable, and you can really just start aligning it that way. And that's a good way to start learning how to do it. And as you do, and as with all skills, the more you practice, the better you get, and eventually you don't really need to worry too much about it. So if I'm gonna...
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an art form to figure out what each syllable looks like in a waveform, and some of them are going to be like, yo, you have to align it right at the beginning of it, and other ones you have to like have it advance slightly forward.
Yeah. And in my case, because I'm also doing a duet, something like it starts with solo lines, but everyone sings a little bit differently. Some people like to hit their consonants harder than others, and that's fine. Just something for you to keep in mind with. And since I have a lot of takes, let me cut down to my active takes for here. Go. So you can see that like we're singing the same lines, but our waveforms are slightly different. And it's partially because of the way we enunciate, partially because of the way we attack notes and our microphones. And that's fine. So let's just start with the first solo line here, which is, I'm going to just mute him. Or actually, let me just pull down the off vocal lower. But like, so he's mostly in time. I remember this mix. I was horrendously off time at times, but you can see you can already see that he's mostly aligning. You can really nitpick if you feel like it. You don't really need to. Like if you overly time people, it really takes away from like their singing, especially in solos where like, people naturally will be going slower than the beat at times or a little faster. And you should really be timing only when they're like really off. So you can already see here that he's getting a little bit off beat. You can see it like he's not aligned to grid. So usually I put an anchor point here. That anchor point will be like the main anchor point of this phrase or this syllable, this word. Okay. And then question regarding setting the BPM.
Oh, I answered it.
Okay, cool. But yes, you can set the BPM whenever you feel like it. I personally put it at the beginning. It's for me, mixing is sort of like this meditative process with multiple little parts to it. I start by setting the BPM because it makes me feel like I'm setting myself up for a good mix. It's helpful to plan for planning purposes too. But yeah, so he's a little bit off here and there. It's not that big of a deal. I can just, so you can see that there's multiple syllables here. And I'm essentially going right before it starts spiking up. And then you just keep on doing that. It's a tedious thing. Unfortunately, the one thing I wish we could do like animators could is like watch YouTube videos while mixing, but we can't.
Can you explain exactly how you're putting in the anchor points?
Yeah. So essentially I'm doing Shift W, which is like the shortcut, but it'd be the same as
Shift W.
Yes. So technically, you could do it like the long way is that you select with your cursor. So you're going to put your cursor where you want the anchor to be. And you're going to literally just go to your stretch markers and you're going to add a stretch marker at the cursor. And pretty much that marker, if you're not moving it, will not move. It's a static point in time. So like you can see, I can stretch it, I can shrink it, I could do really funky, I could do whatever I want with it. And then essentially you just keep on going. Syllable, you could go syllable by syllable. I'm a lazy bum when it goes to solos, and if it sounds mostly in time for me, I usually let it slide, honestly, when it's solo lines. So, you know, we could just keep on going. Technically, you know, you could also use, like I said earlier, there's the on vocal right here. You could use it to time. You could see even the on vocal, they're not fully in time with grid, and that's fine. It's not that big of a deal here. So like... And pretty much how many anchors you put in is really up to your judgment call. You can be lazy and literally just notice that everyone generally is every syllable is generally late or not. And okay, so for Wasi's note about changing the BPM, that will change the rate of the play rate. You can change that, like I explained earlier, in your project settings. If you make your time base time and you make your signature envelope beats, it will actually keep it from stretching things while you're changing BPM. That's a cool little tidbit. That's also why I didn't like timing in Reaper at the beginning.
One of the issues if you're using time-based effects like delay and reverb, if you change the BPM, it'll change those effects. So don't mix with before you decide the BPM of the song.
Yes, that's very important. While you can set custom BPMs inside of a lot of delay functions, it's a little easier just to set it as your global BPM, because it's, unless you're doing some wacky EDM song where you need it to be on slightly different time base.
ぶり出せ服から染み出したオイル欲に溺れた生き物に繰り出したオイル
So you can already see that I hear myself running slightly late. I'm running late the entire song, if I remember correctly, because this song's quite quick. So for me, is I like to use like pretty much points in time for me to just shift everything to the right place if I notice that someone's generally off time. Let's see. Then, you know, you could already see that I'm running late from then on. I have that habit. Everyone has different like timing habits. I tend to run a little late when I'm singing, and that's totally fine. And
溺れた生き物に下せた罰どうしたって分かり合えない叶わなくたって叫び続けたい錆びついた哲学ぶん回して
He's running a little late. Well, pretty much I'm just gonna skip forward with this. This is like, it's gonna take a long time. Timing is tedious. Timing arguably takes the most time in the whole process. Timing and tuning. And then one thing I do want to touch base on before I like sort of move on from like showing how to time is really when you have multiple people singing at the same time and with harmonies. So weird little factor in harms is that they don't need to actually be fully in time. It actually adds a nice depth to the mix if you don't have them exactly on time. But one thing that's really important that everyone will always notice is if people don't finish their lines at the same time. And if people's hard consonants don't align. So like over here, you can see that we are clearly not fully aligning. You already see that like he's running a bit ahead, like behind me, and like these little things like that, especially with these hard spikes or the harder consonants, that's really important to make sure that you really align. And I know that like in general, this community is very good about it. But I think what people always forget, which is my personal pet peeve, is that they time everyone, but then some people end up still holding the note, and then someone else finishes the note first. And that's like something to really note in like timing harms or any type of like unison lines together. So you can see that he's running ahead of me here. And pretty much this part of mixing is actually very visual. Something like rather than like you can use the audio to help you along. For me, I end up making it a lot more visually. I think Fome, you also do it. You do
Very
it
visually.
Very visually, yeah. Yeah, and then you can already see that the harmonies are totally out of sync here. Do not be afraid to just literally cut in someone's track and just move the whole thing around. It's worked for me in my extreme lazy moments, and it saved me a lot of time. So the hardest part is like when people have moments where they sing it like completely differently than someone else. I think really it's just to take your time and really zoom in and break it down into single syllables. So you can see already that I'm going zuto like a lot earlier, but like just by me just pulling it. And you don't need to worry too intensely about making it like perfect, because you really don't hear those little differences anyways. So sometimes you're a little confused about how it aligns. You can always go back to the on vocal, and I'm just gonna like show roughly because it does take some finagling, and sometimes I end up just doing one person at a time in order to fix it. So he's running a little bit late. But sorry, I'm going quiet. But like this song's really syncopated, so it gets. Ah, yes. So clearly I'm not singing it the same as Vuvu is, but due to the magic of having multiple people singing at the same time, you could usually hide this type of stuff too. So like at the end of the day, like you can nip and tuck, and you can sort of tuck away any of like little like fluctuations that go on in timing, unless it's like a really massive timing issue, and then I usually recommend to try with the vocalist to see if they can do redos. There is a limit to how much timing can fix. But timing can do quite a bit, because I've managed to time a whole song where they sang to an on vocal at a different BPM than their instrumental. I'm never dealing with that again, but like it's definitely doable in the right like context. You see that it's already starting to clean up. So do you guys have any questions so far? Because I know this is really tedious. Timing is tedious. Don't be afraid to stop if you get frustrated, or if it feels really overwhelming. Like personally for me, I do like to time people at the same time sometimes, but when they have a lot of lines coming in, I will do it one person at a time and slowly go down and just time them as is. And then afterwards, when I'm done timing each solo person, I end up going and like timing everyone's as a whole to make sure that they're aligning at the same points. And like that's the most important takeaway from timing, is to make sure that like the group for group lines, that it's really aligned at the same time. I don't really have anything else to talk about for timing. Like I don't want it to be like this whole thing where I'm just sort of demoing how to time, because it's time consuming. We all know it takes a while. It's going in before.
You want to go into Melodyne stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. So in general, in this case, Vuvu and I are pretty aligned, but mostly because of the fact that like I actually recorded to his on vocal, to his lines, to make sure that I aligned my endings as much as I could. But yeah, like it's just gonna be different for each case. So let's just say I want to tune. I'll tune some of my lines. It's a little easier to explain it. Essentially, I do use external Melodyne. So what you can do to load Melodyne in is you'd be going to, and I don't remember, you go into options, you go to your preferences, and over there, what you can do is you can set external editors. And for me, so it'll have a primary and a secondary one. And a nice little tidbit on Reaper is that Reaper will send the files directly to the external editor, so you don't need to be looking for it in your folders at all. And okay, so are there other ways to time without those stretch markers? There are, but it's choppy. A lot of people back in the olden days, what you would do when you're timing is that you would literally start cutting and moving, cutting and moving. And let me tell you, it's not ideal. I don't recommend it. For the most part, actually, I feel that most DAWs, if not nearly all DAWs, do have a stretch function. Some of them are a little bit tucked away and they're hidden away. So I recommend you looking through their manuals, because they definitely have stretch ones. Even like Audition has it. Audacity has a stretch function, if I remember correctly. I used to be, back in 2006, I was timing by adding in silences. And I know that's how Kazuo does it too, is that you get so good at it, is that you know exactly how many milliseconds something's off by, and you just add in that many milliseconds of silences. The only thing is that like doesn't work when people aren't ending their lines at the same time and everything, but it was a mood. And yes, you can also time in Melodyne. Fome's gonna cover that because that's what he does. I personally separate everything out into different apps just because that's what I'm more comfortable with. And so as I showed you earlier in my preferences, I set my primary as Melodyne. So what you would do here is that you would double click on it and you can edit it, right? And then you can essentially just browse to your the installation file, the exe file that these items are in. So I have Melodyne and I have RX6. RX6 is an audio editor. It helps you clean up audio, deverb things, like popping noises, like the smacking noises. I'm not going to cover it here. Like I'm sure someone else will cover it later on in like one of the later episodes. But for me, Melodyne is going to be my primary. So what I would do, let's say I want to time this one snippet, right? So you can open it in Melodyne essentially. So you would go and right click on it, and then you'd open items in editor, and you open in Melodyne. So you can see that Melodyne has it open. This is Melodyne 4. Melodyne 4 has really nice little tidbits to it that I'm sure Fome will cover more of. But the nicest thing about it is that it allows you to set hotkeys for different tools. And I'm gonna give you a quick overview first about how like the tools work, at least in terms of tuning, and also how you can make sure that when you're tuning, it's not like a fully permanent change, and you can revert your changes. And that's a nice little tidbit on standalone Melodyne, is that you can undo all of your changes as needed, and it requires you to save. Yeah, you can do it as a VST too. That's a nice thing. I think you can always do it on the VST, but like Melodyne standalone, like for Melodyne 3, didn't have that, and that was really annoying in its own way. But the cool thing about this standalone now, as it stands, is that you can reverse all your changes, and you can also save as new version from the Melodyne application. So it doesn't require you to go back and put in the new file. It'll automatically load it in as you time. So for me to start doing that is I'll usually save it as an MPD file that tracks all the changes. I mean, it's just gonna go to the last thing I was tuning. I'm just gonna put it somewhere. Okay. So essentially this MPD file is essentially like a mix, like a mixed track, like the mixing file that you'd have in Reaper, and it'll let me undo all my changes. So like, let's say I like tune something hella weird, I don't like it, I can undo things. I could reset my timing, I could also reset my tuning, and yeah. So I'm personally gonna cover just the tuning tools. To access them, you could either go up here, you could also right click on it. So these are the tuning tools. If I remember correctly, these are the timing tools. There's like attack tools and pull tools. I'm not really good at timing in Melodyne. I've tried, it never works for me. I've given up on it. But so up here are the global edits, and this is for tuning. This is going to be for timing, if I remember correctly. Yes. And for tuning, usually what I do is I just drag the pitch center to 100%. Now, I'm not the best person to explain people how I tune. I have perfect pitch, so I just hear it as off. Unfortunately, with tuning, it's sort of, you really need to practice to figure out when something's hitting the right note. And I know that like a lot of people, when they first start, I usually tell people to just always go back to the original and make sure it's sounding like the same. Because the thing is that when you do a global, like, pitch center like lock, what Melodyne is doing is Melodyne's just using your lines, and it's sort of just predicting what it thinks the key you're in. So it will sometimes snap to the wrong notes when you're doing this. And this is like something for you to note, is that do not think that that button will fix everything. It tends to snap to wrong notes all the time, and then people sound randomly off key in the middle of their lines. So we're gonna listen to this right now. And I think I need to also change my output here really quick. This is gonna be painful.
破れた制服から染み出したオイル、欲に溺れた生き物に下された罰。
So I was pretty in tune to begin with. So you can see it here. Let's see. So you can see that I'm off right here. And essentially what you're gonna do is, this is your I totally forgot to explain how the different pitch tools work. So this is gonna be the main pitch tool. It's just gonna move notes. Also, you also have like, hey Fome, do you remember if the first squiggly is the pitch drift tool or the pitch
pitch modulation and then pitch drift?
Yeah. So modulation is essentially how to best explain it?
It squishes it.
It does squish it. It's essentially, these lines here are how your voice is going through the note. And the modulation tool, yeah, it would essentially flatten any modulation you're going through. And then the pitch drift tool is generally is like the amount of drifting you're going within the note. And essentially, if you fully do a modulation, that's how you sound like you're auto-tuned. So your goal is to avoid that at all costs. And yes, Lixian, if I correctly, does have a point where setting the you can set the right key in Melodyne. I personally don't do it because sometimes it really throws off everything, because the thing I personally feel is that people singing through notes in general tend to drift through other notes as they're sliding up into like their main note. And my goal personally when I'm tuning is to keep that as natural as possible in order to not really mess around their voice too much, because less is more for timing personally. And also
the key doesn't help me at all either. It's because people are sliding into the notes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it gets really weird because then it'll like snap their slide into the wrong key and it sounds really off. Also, someone said pitch deja vu.
Because you're drifting. I just been in this place before.
Yeah. Perfect. But yeah, like and so in my case, those are the three tools. And also another tool that's really important would be the split tool, because even though Melodyne tries to detect syllables, it won't always work. So sometimes you have to cut it, or you have to cut it a little differently because it sounds unnatural. So that's a basic overview. And yeah, keys can help to a point. I just don't like undoing what it's done, like when you set it to a key. So you already see that this is like the first note. I'm scooping into it, like I'm scooping down into it. And like, let's say if I want to make myself go flatter without sounding auto-tuned, I would use the pitch drift tool. And I think so, at least. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky because you can already see that like it varies for each person. But nice little thing is I do personally have my own shortcuts. You can set them by going to your preferences and you go into your shortcuts. And then essentially it would be inside of editing tools. And you can already see that like I have a pitch QRW. Why is it QRW? It's just happened to be that way. I think I chose it to be that way. The note separation tool is E. And then I also have A, which is like the full reset button for me.
Take a screenshot for reference of Mochi's hotkey preferences.
Yeah, it's just for me, it's because I'm thinking of it like, you know, like how when you game you do WASD, because everything's on your left hand. I want everything on my left hand. So I just have everything like QWER. That's how I do everything. And I put R as the modulation because I want to. I usually avoid using that tool unless I really have to. And most of the time, I'm doing like the pitch tool, the pitch drift tool, and then this note split tool when I'm personally tuning. Sorry, everyone's different. No perfect tool. Choose the best way of doing it. And yes, Zal does have a point that Melodyne Studio and Melodyne Elements Essentials, are different in features. I don't really remember how they're different nowadays. Because I used to use single track, which was very different. Like Melodyne single track. Is it just that Melodyne Studio is the only one that has multi-track capabilities?
I'm not sure. I only use Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody on the chat knows the exact differences, they could put it in.
So essentially you can see that I'm like spiking up into the note. And whether you, how much you tune is up to your discretion. Personally for me, I try to avoid like, you know, like how people naturally slide through notes. I keep the slide going because that overtune sound you get is what happens when you essentially lock everything and you keep people from drifting around, because when people lose that natural fluctuation through the notes, that's when they start sounding a little robotic, personally. And yeah, so pretty much you'd be essentially snapping things to the right note. I am horrible at teaching people how to figure out where the right note is. You're just gonna have to listen to the line, listen to the original, go back and forth. The more you do it, it's a pain, but eventually you figure it out. You can already see that, like when I'm hitting like this E, right? Like I'm slightly going sharp, and you can see me like sliding really sharply on it. So a nice little cool little tip is that, like, let's say when you're in the pitch tool, you can also affect how you're sliding between notes. So you just hover right in the middle and you're gonna see like the line of the curve going on. Jess says Essential does basic pitch editing, Assistant does in-depth, and audio to MIDI, and Editor has polyphony and tempo editing. So you technically can't time an Essential then, right?
Well, I think it just means you can change the tempo.
So what I like to do when I split is I do like to split like at the beginning of the notes, just because like people naturally fluctuate things between notes, like I've said earlier. And I try to like essentially smooth the glide. I want it to always be like a curve between notes and not like sudden like jumps and everything. And Studios does have that feature where you can just do picture for every note, but I do like doing it note by note. It's like you're drawing a piece of art. So everyone has a different way of doing it. But that's like really basic. Let me just finish tuning. So like I could see that I'm really spiking up and down. There's different ways of going of fixing this. You can either like use a pitch. That's when the pitch modulation tool is helpful, because it helps you flatten it a bit. But you don't want to flatten it completely, because then it sounds like, you know, like it sounds auto-tuned. So So that's how I usually do tuning. I mean, if people wanted me to be a little more in-depth about it, I'm sure like I could be. I think it's just that because we have a lot to go through today, I'm gonna just cut it short right over here.
All right, thanks, Mochi.
And I think the only thing I would explain is just the fact that you can do save and replace audio. And if I do that, it will literally just save the last file as a .org1 .wave and then override it with the new file. So like when I go in, it's just gonna auto load everything in. Do you guys have any questions or?
If you have stuff specific to Melodyne, for my part, I'm gonna go really in depth in Melodyne because I only use Melodyne for timing and tuning. So stay tuned for that.
Just gonna see if people have anything else to say. You're more than welcome to ask us any questions on Twitter after the fact. Someone who doesn't sing, I'm really curious. You find mixing your own vocals? I don't like mixing my own vocals. It's because I'm not as pitchy as before, but the weird little fun fact about you having perfect pitch is that you're very critical about how you go through notes. And then I don't enjoy how I like go through notes. But at the same time, because I know my voice really well, I can EQ it in like 5 seconds. So there's that. So other people's vocals, the only thing that's hard is that unless I've worked with them before, you never know what they're gonna give you. So like sometimes it can be like, you know, they had a problem with their hardware and they sound muddy, and that's a lot of work to fix. And so yeah. Do you think it's a good idea to show timing tuning without Melodyne? I don't know how to tune without Melodyne. I mean, I do, but like my way of doing it is like not feasible for majority of people.
Auto tune is the plugin, not the effect, but the plugin can be used to tune. Waves tune is another way. There's retune that's built into Reaper, but honestly, Melodyne is an industry standard. It sounds way better than all those other programs.
Well, auto tune arguably sounds pretty good too, though.
I like Melodyne. But.
I know you like Melodyne, but yes, everyone's different. Retune is the one that's built into Reaper. It's not that good. Personally, I don't really like it.
All right, should we do a little switcheroo? Yeah,
let's do a switcheroo because anyways, like we're still going to be in call, so I'm still going to be around, but I will be around in chat and I'll answer any questions. And we're gonna swap over to Fome right now. He's gonna show you guys how to do timing and tuning inside of just Melodyne. And yeah, if you guys want to ask about any other different like timing and tuning plugins, we can always bring some people in who do know how to use it. I think Jeffers and Katie both use Autotune regularly. I do use Wavetune sometimes to do Autotune effect. But,
yeah, if you guys want to learn more about Autotune, maybe we grab those guys to do a stream sometime.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to swap over.
All right, stay tuned. I'll be in a sec. Hey guys, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. It looks like my screen is on. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So
someone had a someone had a question about do I use to time or tune first? It doesn't really matter. Either way works. A lot of people tune first because they like to listen to tuned lines while timing.
Yeah, so the way I'm going to do it is actually at the same time. And so I'm going to talk about doing timing and tuning and Melodyne together. I think it has a few benefits over doing it separately. No dissing the way Mochi does it, because I think that's a great way also. But to me, I really like to hear the tuning and rhythm together with all the effects at the same time as I'm tuning, and it really helps for me getting an idea of how the song's going to be. And also to me, like pitch and rhythm can't really be separated, because like, you know, if you're sliding into a note and I'm stretching things out in Reaper, like, you know, at what point are you going to decide this is where this note lies and this is where that note lies? It's like kind of a spectrum, so I want to have that fine control, and Melodyne really allows you to do that. And the last thing is, in the latest version of Melodyne 4, it has a feature called Audio Random Access, or ARA. Now, before they had this function, it was really annoying to use Melodyne as a VST inside of Reaper, because you would have to open up the track, you hit a button that says transfer, and then play through the entire track. It'll then load in Melodyne, and then you can edit it. And once you edit it, it doesn't show your changes in real time if you do anything else with the timing. It's just really annoying. But now we have this new feature called ARA, and ARA allows whatever things you do in like the DAW with the tracks to immediately get reflected inside the Melodyne plugin. So now you have instantaneous feedback between the two, and it's not separate anymore. And this only works in the latest version of Reaper, Reaper 6. So before you try doing this, make sure you have Reaper 6 and Melodyne 4. And I know there's a lot of other DAWs that support ARA. Most of them support it even before Reaper. So, you know, if you're using Pro Tools, if you're using Studio One, they already have this stuff built into it, so don't worry about it.
Studio One literally just had Melodyne preloaded in.
Okay.
Like it was, but yes.
Yeah. Studio One actually has Melodyne like built into itself. So yeah, and that's also a great DAW. Before we keep going, I want to do a quick shout out to Cecile. She should be in the chat, but Cecile designed a really cute mascot. He's super. I love him. He gives me like Kenta vibes. But I realized we don't have a name for our mascot yet. So Cecile, please give a name to the mascot. And yeah, it's really nice. Okay, so let's get into this. So for today's project, we are going to mix or edit a solo that nobody's ever heard before. No one's heard yet. And it was submitted by a special guest just for today. And if anyone can guess who's singing, then you get points. So the first thing we're going to do is, let's see here. We're going to just take a listen to this. This is the instrumental. Yeah, it's like some racking song. I really like it. What we're going to do is load Melodyne as a VST. So I have all my vocal buses already, just presets that I made. And what we're going to do is we're going to open a new track. So we can right click, insert new track, or you can click Control T. And this new track, I'm going to drag it inside this other track. So this other track has all my effects and stuff, like my different EQ and compression settings. But within that folder, I'm going to put the individual stems. And then in those stem folders, I'm going to put Melodyne. So first thing we're going to do is this track, let's call it main, or main 1. Let's call it main 1. And then we will add Melodyne to it. So you click on the effects button here, and you want to go to VST3 among all these. So you have like categories of plugins. Go to VST3 and you type Melodyne, and you have to use VST3 because VST3 is the version of this plugin that allows ARA to happen. So Melodyne used to be available as VST2, but then there's next generation plugins called VST3, which allows plugins to talk to each other and talk to your DAW more. You have to use VST3 version of Melodyne 4. So I'm going to load that up right now. And if I'm moving too fast or you guys have any questions, stop me at any point. I know we're going a little bit over time, but not this first time. Anyway, so now Melodyne is open. I'm going to close this right now, and you see that there's nothing in it. It's empty, right? I'm going to load in a track. So here we're going to do this main take right here. We're going to load it right in. And then I believe this person sang it to be synced with the original instrumental. So I'm just going to line it up with that. And of course, I already did the BPM setting as Mochi described, because it's very important to set the BPM of the project before you begin. So this BPM of the song is 167 beats per minute. All right. So let's take a listen to the raw vocals with the instrumental, and let's see how it sounds right now. All right, cool. Hey, Mochi, are you still there? No?
Yes, I am.
You are still there.
Hello?
Okay, I just want to make sure my thing didn't screw up in any way.
No, it's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, so...
Is there a reason on why you're on stereo and not mono for the vocals? Do you actually do that?
No, I mean, it was sent to me stereo by this person who shall not be named. In general, you guys should be sending your vocals in mono. Stereo is literally doesn't do anything more than double the file size. So just send it in mono when you can. But, it's stereo, whatever, I can work with it.
Do you because for me, I usually have it set it to mix down to mono if needed.
Yeah,
Do you do
I
that?
can do that, but there's no point to doing it right now because I'm going to see it in Melodyne as mono.
All right.
Okay, so so this person sent this wonderful singing, and we're going to tune it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is listen to the original, and we're going to just so I get a better idea of how it's supposed to sound. So I have the original above this, and I'm going to solo it, play it through. Oh, it sounds really nice. So This singer sang it pretty closely. I think they have a great technique, and we just need to clean up the pitch and the timing a little bit. So let's listen to it again. Alright, really nice. So let's go in and start editing it. So I'm going to separate just this part from the rest of it. I'm going to split it here, and that to split is just to highlight, put the cursor on, and press S. Okay, now it's split. So I'm going to work with this part by itself. I'm also just going to split a little bit here. Alright, so make sure you select the track that you're working on. It's very important, okay? Because if you select a different track and then I hit the effects here, it's actually not going to show you the correct thing. Or if you, like for example, if well right now there's only one Melodyne track, so it will show, but you have to make sure that you're selecting the track that you're editing. So select this track, hit effects. And like magic, all the lines are already in Melodyne. I didn't have to transfer or do anything. This is because ARA has the ability to automatically put it in. Now, before I get started, there's a couple settings we have to change. Melodyne default, you have to turn the time grid. It has active time grid on and quarter note separation. You gotta turn both of those off. Those are garbage. If you have active time grid, it'll snap the notes to where it thinks it ought to be, and it's always wrong. So disable this. Then you want to do time grid 1/8 note. That'll give you a little more fine control. Let's see. I'm just checking the chat. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. And then we can go to the pitch grid. Make sure this says no snap. Okay, because snap makes it impossible for you to do fine pitching. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom in and pan around. So this is where I introduce a couple hotkeys that are very important. To zoom, you hold Control-Alt. Your cursor will turn into a magnifying glass. Then you can drag left and right to zoom in horizontally, up and down to zoom vertically. So when I want to zoom into a part, I just drag diagonally in like that. So like this. Okay, and then the other thing I'm doing is panning it. And to pan it is you hit Control, Shift, and then your cursor will turn into a little hand. And then you can just drag it around like this. So these are the tools I use to get around. Okay, so you can zoom and then you can pan. And Mochi, if someone has a question on the chat, can let me know, because I am actually not paying too close attention to the chat right now.
Yeah, I'll
Right.
ping you. I think someone was just saying about like whether there was an advantage, like if the other advantage of using the VST is that you could listen to the instrumental while you're tuning.
Yeah, exactly. So you can listen to it with the effects, with the instrumental in the project. It sounds, to me, way easier. But it is more challenging because you have to get used to the way things look inside Melodyne, and it doesn't look the same way as the waveform in Reaper. So I'm just going to start going through this and showing you how I would approach doing note by note. Again, the tools that you're going to need, there's only 6 tools that you ever need to be able to edit vocals in Melodyne. You need the pitch tool, you need the pitch modulation tool, pitch drift tool, the timing tool, the amplitude tool, and the note separation tool. And I have those all hotkeyed up to, I have an ASD ZXC, and as Mochi mentioned before, you can just set it yourself to go to settings, preferences, go to shortcuts, then go to editing tools, and you can make those hotkeys whatever you like. So I have pitch tool A, pitch modulation S, drift D, and then amplitude is C, timing tool is Z, and note separation tool is X. So we're going to start using those tools, and you can play back from Melodyne inside anywhere by double clicking at a point. So if I double click here, so you hear it playing back, but amazingly it's also playing back with all the effects. So that makes it really cool. So let's think how we're going to tune this. So he goes, "Ule," it's in the original song. Let's take a listen to how it sounds. Ule, it's a different note, but I'm not going to change it because it's still in key, and I think it sounds good. So I don't see a reason why I should force it to change. So I'm going to keep it that note. And we're going to use the time tool. So I hit Z for me, or you can right click on it and, you know, find the time tool. Or you can use this arrow. This arrow is just like the master tool that allows you to do everything. If you use that, it'll automatically time if you drag like this, or it'll pitch it if you drag up and down. Let me see. Go to this tool, the arrow tool. Arrow tool. Yeah, arrow tool. Or you can, oh, it's not working. Whatever. I'm not going to use that tool. I'm going to use the tools that I hotkeyed. All right, so we're going to... Okay, so we want it to start right on this line. And you're looking at this waveform, and you have to decide where's the beginning of the note. And you see that there's a little portion here, and then the note doesn't start until a little bit after. And so that's telling me that that beginning of it is probably just like the beginning transient of the note. And you don't really want to time it so that it starts here. You want to time it so that it starts here. So this lines up right here. Right, so it sounds pretty good already. This is actually important to note that this note division is wrong. And this is why I was saying before that pitch and rhythm are kind of inseparable to me. So the next syllable, re, so ure, looks like to me it starts from here, not from here. So if I click here, see, it starts saying re. So that means this note separation isn't quite right. And you have the option of changing the note separation using the note separation tool. So I have a hotkey to C, or no, I have an X. And then you can simply move this over here to change it. Or even better, I think it's good to have this in two notes separated. That way you have the individual control. And I think this whole section needs to be a little bit farther back. So I swap to the timing tool where I hit Z and I pull it back like that. Ureino. Okay, and then let's go to the next note, tsu. Or no, I think it looks like it starts here to me. So I'm gonna separate that out, and I'm gonna pull that back a little bit further too, because it was ahead of the beat. And then this note is a little bit flat, so I'm gonna use the pitch tool, which is I have it set to A. If you double click it, it'll lock to the nearest note, or you can just drag it up and down like this. And this is also a good time to demonstrate, as Mochi mentioned before, the pitch drift tool, which is going to help you kind of rearrange the note to better have it on average on the key of the song without changing the inflection of the way they sing it, if that makes sense. So if you want to think about it in terms of like artwork, maybe an artist, let's say they're doing line art, and after their sketch they want to line over the sketch. If you use something like the pitch modulation tool, that will make the lines super clean and flat, but it'll get rid of all like the intricacies of their lines. Like it won't have like the different thicknesses and all those little variations that give it character. But if you use the pitch drift tool, it'll preserve those aspects. So as Mochi mentioned before, you want to use the pitch drift tool as much as you can. So here it's like this second half of it looks like it goes sharp. It starts on and it goes sharp a little bit. It's not that important, but I'm just going to demonstrate anyway. So I'm going to go to the pitch drift tool. So you can right click and go to pitch drift, which is this button right here. And click on it and drag down. If you guys can see what's happening. What'll happen, it's kind of have a seesaw effect where it pulls the part of the note that's on this side down while pulling this part up. So that's preserving the character of the note that he's saying. And this is what helps make it sound natural and not just like autotune. Because if I use the pitch modulation tool, it'll do this. It'll turn it totally flat. And you know how that sounds? It'll sound like this. And he sounds like Vocaloid basically. So you don't want to do that. I'm just checking on the chat. Is there anything? Mochi, is anyone asking anything? Am I going okay?
No, you're good.
All right, cool.
I'm just like sort of hovering on it, so we good.
Okay. So we go ure. Okay, now we get to the next note. This is interesting. The note it's tsu. Tsu has a very long transient in the beginning because it's ts, tsu. So what I'm gonna do is this tsu start is really long and to me throws up the rhythm a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is separate the tsu from the rest of the note. I'm gonna switch to my note separation tool, which is here, or use my hotkey, and I'm gonna separate tsu from like this. So now this is separate. So I want to be right on the time. Tsukini. But I don't want it to be tsukini because that's too long of a sound for me. So I'm going to shorten this tsu like that. And let's take a listen to how that sounds. Not bad. I think this timing is a little bit off still. Let's move it like that. Sounds much better to me. All right. Now let's go to the next note. Tsukini. This is a little bit flat, and this note is also separated wrong because this is one note with a vibrato, and we need to make it look like that. So I'm going to go to the note separation tool and click here on the existing separation, and it will delete that separation. So now it's going to be correctly one note. It goes and then it dips down because he has a character of the way he sings where he kind of drifts back down for some notes, which is, it's part of the way you deliver the line. So I don't want to mess with that. I want to keep it there. So let's make this note correct. So this part right here, from here to here, is where the meat of the note is going to be. So let's make sure that's in the correct place. Nope, it needs to be up here. So I'm going to adjust this whole section like that. But I still want the beginning of the note to start lower because he has a portamento here where he slides from the low note up to the tsukini, tsukini, tsukini. So we're going to present that. Yeah. You can even do things like you can add artificial portamento. Like if I want him really exaggerated, let's like. And sometimes it's for a taste. You can do that, but I'm not gonna do that. I think just a little bit is fine. Okay, and now it's in tune, and this vibrato looks like it dips a little bit flat for my taste. So now I'm going to switch back to the drift tool. And the drift tool is amazing because you can change vibrato, the pitch center of the vibrato, but it doesn't get rid of the vibrato. So using drift tool, I click on the vibrato section, drag down. Look at that. Now it rearranged the vibrato so that it's more centered on this note, but it still has the peaks and valleys of a vibrato. Oh, it sounds bad. Oh, we're not going to say it. It doesn't sound good. Yeah, maybe just a little bit. Tsuki, and then we're gonna smooth out some of these transitions here. So tsuki, I'm gonna switch to my pitch tool, and pitch tool is whenever you put the cursor between two notes, it'll turn into this kind of a slidey cursor, and then you can adjust smoothing between the notes, pitch smoothing like this. So I'm going to try and hear how that sounds. And there's a lot of guess and check involved in this. It's not always going to sound good on the first try. I think that sounds a little bit artificial. I think this portamento needs to be a little more, but it's exaggerated. Oh, that sounds much better in my opinion. And then let's raise this up a little bit. Yeah. Okay, let's just listen to that first part with the music. Yeah, so now that first part sounds much better. If you want to spend a lot of time, you can make it super transparent and like go down to every detail, make sure nothing sounds artificial. I'm trying to do a kind of speed demonstration right now, so I'm not going to go into that much detail, but I'll just say that you can make it sound extremely transparent and natural if you put in a lot of time and effort into it. Okay, Okay, this part goes negai. So I think the ne starts here. So this is another part where the consonant is not split correctly. He goes negai. So the beginning of this is n, and then ne starts here. So I'm going to split that. Yeah, and then we're going to pull that back a little bit. Ne. So the note is this. Okay, so we want to preserve this sliding here, so I'm gonna kind of just shift it up a little bit, and then I'm gonna try to smooth this out. I'm gonna actually undo this. Okay, and then gai. And then I'm gonna go drift, just the drift here. Smooth that out. Let's see. Do you want to slide here, or do you want to just hit the note? Maybe a slide. Oh, that's kind of too much. Maybe just a little bit. Let's just do that for now. And then adjust the drift a little bit here. The timing is a little bit off. It's a little bit... This needs to be pushed back a little bit, even though this is a weird case because the ta is actually comes before the note, so it's messing up the way you perceive it. Maybe a little bit more. All right, so let's listen to that with the audio. Sounds much better. How about you guys? Doesn't that sound better? Okay, cool. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go to the rest of that part. I'm just going to show you how, once you're happy with the way it sounds, how I save it. So I'm going to split this off. And then on here, with this effect on, I'll right click it, and then you hit apply track, take effects to items as new take, mono output. When you click this, it will burn that track that you just edited over the original raw. So I'm going to click that. Now it's burned down, and you're like, oh no, I lost the original. Actually, you didn't. It's actually just a new take. And there's a hotkey in Reaper that allows you to look at the different takes. I have it hidden right now, but if you hit Control L, you'll see the original take. So here's the old take. Here's the one that you edited. So now you always have the original to go back to. Now, one thing to remember is because there's ARA involved, even if you go back to this original, Melodyne's going to remember the edits that you did, so it's not going to sound raw. And the only way you would make it sound raw again is like you move it to a new track or you delete Melodyne, re-add it. But this is more like you have a insurance policy that you can always go back to the original track if you mess something up. All right, so that's the basics of how you navigate Reaper. I'm going to show you one other feature in Melodyne 4. This is the multitrack feature that allows you to look and edit multiple tracks at the same time, all within Melodyne. So let's add a harmony. So in this low harmony bus I have, I'm going to add a new track, Control T. I did 2 by accident here. Here's a new track. I'm going to make this a track within this folder. So now all the things that are done here will go into this track. I'm going to pull up this singer's harmony. Pull that up. All right, and then let's see. Make sure it's timed with the song. Yeah. Okay, so let's go over here. This part has the harmony going along with the melody. So I'm not going to actually do it exactly, but I'll show you what you can do. This harmony now has no effects, so I'm gonna add Melodyne as a new instance. So I'll hit FX here, add Melodyne. Okay, now array analysis happening. Sometimes it freezes up a little bit. Okay, here it is. So here's the harmony line. So you have melody here and the harmony here. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the melody and then open this to edit that. And then I'm going to go over here to the harmony and open this to edit that. But you actually don't have to do it that way. You can do it all in one instance of Melodyne. So I'm going to, for example, open up the Melodyne window here. Here's the melody. We could, instead of going to the other track to edit the harmony, you click this button here, which is the Multitrack. So I think it's this one here. No, it's this one. Yeah. Now you'll see over here, any track that has an instance of Melodyne in it will appear here. And what you can do is you can swap between these different tracks in Melodyne. Even better, you can edit them at the same time. See, you can have both tracks on at the same time, edit them at the same time. So you can see exactly how they're lining up with each other timing wise. And this one's clearly behind. That's very powerful. You can imagine how much this makes choruses easier, because I can have 5 tracks open at the same time. Now, this is harmony, so it's separate. It's actually below this note, so you can actually see it. If they were the same note, they'd all be on top of each other. It'd be kind of hard to mess with. So if that were the case, what you can do is, you see this little gray button right here. This will show the note, but it'll not let you edit it. So what I can do is I can have the mains editable, but I make the harmonies visible but not editable. See, so now I see where the harmony is, but I'm not actually touching it. I'm only using it as a reference. So using that tool, you can very rapidly, go note by note, be like, and be like, oh, I want this to be like that, and I want this to be like that. And then you'd be like, oh, this one's a little bit behind, that one's a little bit ahead. I'll pull that up like that. So you can very quickly go through and do tuning and editing at the same time this way. And with that, I think that will conclude my little tutorial on how to tune and time with Melodyne, all in the same program. If you guys have more specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know this was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we want to keep these short. Mochi, do you have any comments about this, or do you guys in the chat have any other questions? We can help answer.
I mean, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to just mention the Twitter, and we'll probably be able to answer them directly to you guys. Or you could just mention either of us, I think.
No, I know our stream is chat is like a few seconds behind when you guys are typing, so I'm gonna hold on for a little bit, make sure I don't miss any questions that we can answer. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys are finding this helpful, because it sure took me a long time to learn this stuff. So if it makes anybody else's life easier, I'm really happy.
And yeah, I think that's just the conclusion of our first stream. Feel free to keep on sending us questions. We're still going to be looking through it. This stream's going to still stay up on our